Alright, hi there YouTube, it's me, Morphsuit America, and in this video, I'll be talking about New Genesis Augment system, the pros and cons to it, then the Oracle one. Note that I did already express my opinions about it. I'll restate it again at the end of this video, and this video is going to stress on a lot of the technical things that I did mention, but I didn't really show it, and it's better to show a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about. You'll see some text pop up every now and then as well. So if you want to see a certain point, look at the description for that. Note that I might mention a few other things. You can find videos for that if I do mention them in the upper right hand corner or in the description. But yeah, alright, so here's the thing. If you don't know the term affix augment, fancy way of saying it's a stat. A stat that you can put or you can find on your weapon and unit. Now, or you can get off of the field. Now, the act of affixing and augmenting is the process of you putting said stat, said certain ability onto your gear. To do this, you would need to talk to the weapon attendant. There's several. Actually, no, there's only one of them in New Genesis, but there's a good chunk of them over there in Oracle as well. So you go over here. I think no one's calling me. You go over here, go over to this NPC, talk to him, and you can start the process if you select the third option. However, you would need your certain equipment you would want to toy around with, and then you would need capsules. I'll make a short video talking about how to get these, but to briefly talk about them, you just need to farm, do events, and just get these things. So, here's the thing. I already made a certain text for this specifically. Here are the pros when it comes to you doing the New Genesis Augment system. And I'm gonna look over here because I'm looking at the stuff that I place in the OBS. So, this does not delete any existing augments, only uses capsules, one simple approach, fixed exchange shop, natural costs isn't expensive, I should have put that. Where is my selector? Is not expensive. And then not as many rules. So, what do I mean by each one of these points? And note that these are once again pros to the New Genesis system. Let me explain the first one. Does not delete existing augments. So, let's say you already did the process of putting a certain ability on your gear. If it's already there, you can keep that there. So, for example, if I look at this sword, it has a freeze resist 1. It's able to have 2 abilities on it. So if I go over here, actually another thing I should have put is upslotting is easier. That's another thing. There we go. Alright, so if I want to toy around with this, for example, I want to put another ability on it, but I want to keep the ability that's already existing, aka the freeze resist 1, it will naturally stay there as long as I do not purposely delete it. So if I hit this confirm button, you'll see 2 different icons. You'll see a green, you'll see this one and then you see a purple one. Pretty much, this is a guaranteed. It will always stay on there unless you purposely get rid of it. Or if you try to override it and get a higher grade. So, this will stay there. This does not, it's not implemented, it's not placed into the weapon yet, and this is you affixing it. But if you do go through this process, even if this fails, the freeze resist is a guaranteed 100%. Now, one rule to state is that it still follows some of the basic stuff from Oracle, which is if you want to get a higher grade of something, you can only get that higher grade. You cannot get both the freeze resist 2 and the freeze resist 1. Now, the next point that I should mention is only using capsules. The only way to do augmenting and affixing right now in New Genesis is having capsules on you. If you don't have a capsule, you can't really do the augment affix process. It's a one simple approach, like I stated. There's a fixed exchange shop. Fixed exchange shop, I'm referring to this thing down here. The exchange special ability capsules. Or over there, it's called augment capsules. This is fixed. It will not cheat you. If you have these things to trade in, you can get that higher grade. Compared to what you had to do back in Oracle, where you can try to get these grades by gambling and manipulating. So if I have all these materials, which is pretty much, since this is a stamina 2 capsule, I need 10 stamina 1s, along with these 5 rocks, I think quartz and crystals or something like that. I need 5 of these certain rocks, and if I have all of them, I could trade it in to get one of these capsules. There's not as many rules. You don't need to worry about, like, if you have a certain ability called a mutation, it can boost your things to try to stack and all that. There's not as many rules in terms of you stacking these different capsules. You don't need to worry about the cost of them. So if I want to go over here and do this process over here, if I use 10 of them, it's not going to be that expensive. It is at least 100% per capsule you use, but that is pretty much it. It doesn't matter what grade it is. That's the natural low cost of it. And then upslotting is easy. So to upslot a certain weapon or unit, you would just need to enhance it. You don't need to worry about doing what Oracle did, and I'll point at all these different things later on. So with that being said, there's a lot of bullet points for the new Genesis Augment. There's only a few cons, and the big one is the fact that you gotta farm a lot. That's the only thing that I'm gonna be stressing. The other one is more my opinion, which is there's not as many formulas, approaches in terms of you getting the certain abilities you want compared to that of what Oracle had to offer. There's not as many gimmicks and whatnot, and you can't really go about it in a very unique way. Everyone's going through this generic one path approach, which is why I said one simple approach and not as many rules. You don't need to worry about using higher grade capsules. It's not going to cost as much because it doesn't affect the natural cost compared to that of like Oracle. But the one thing I'll point out is if you have bad RNG and you cannot for the life of you get higher grades, you will most likely go to this exchange shop and you will have to do a bunch of these conversions. Now, if you're really unlucky, you would have to have a bunch of capsules 1s on you so you can do some of these different conversions. Note that the text you see on the screen right now, it is not entirely accurate because it depends on what the ability is. So for example, if I look over here at the... what is it? This thing over here, this is in the 5s. It's not demanding 10 capsules. Now, to get to grade 2 and 3, it would demand a lot of resources though, especially if you do a bunch of math, and this is just a stupid amount of capsules you need. Once again, that thing that I did on the text that you see, I'm looking this way because that's where my OBS is. Yeah, that thing that you see on the text, it's not entirely true, but it's close to what you're doing in terms of the materials and getting those higher grades. And then let me take that out for now. But yeah, these are all the good points about the new Genesis Augments. And the only thing that I don't like about it is the fact that you gotta farm a lot. And there's only simple approaches and not as many rules in terms of getting the thing that you want. In terms of getting a profit and all that, yes, you can get a profit, but the big thing is you would need to farm the certain capsules abilities that people would want. And then you can place it up on the store, or you can finalize equipment and gear and sell it as it is. However, the big thing I should have stressed before I even started this video, which I forgot about, skills still overwrite that of stats. Yes, you would want to focus on augmenting, affixing at end game once you have all your gear and you got the stuff that you need, and if you feel like you need said giant improvement. But your skills still apply. I'm gonna say that it doesn't matter if you got the shittiest equipment. If you know how to play your class well, you can do well in a fight. If you know how to dodge, you know your iframes, you know how to do this, this, and this. Doesn't matter if you have the best gear or the best stats, you can still technically kick ass with the decent or low grade equipment. Yes, there are some rules you gotta pay attention to in New Genesis because it's different from that of Oracle, like the level gap, and there's a level difference in how if you're at a low very low level, you fight something that's stupidly high, you're not gonna do as much damage. So there is a penalty for that. But yeah. But that digress. That goes to a different topic. Let me go back on topic and talk about now the Oracle Augment Affix system. Another thing to point out before I leave the New Genesis portion. You can't buy capsules naturally from NPCs. And the reason why I bring this up is because there is something that you could do over there in Oracle. Obviously, you can buy stuff from the Visa phone. But if you want to buy it naturally with the NPCs, that is not a thing. I forgot you could sprint in this game. So let us move to the Oracle block now. And let me take this off. But once again, those are most of the pros. Now let me bring up the Oracle one. So as you can see for the Oracle one, there's many approaches to get the end result. And by end result, I'm referring to the certain ability stats you want. Second one is rules, gimmicks. It's complicated, yes. There's a good chunk of things you would need to note if you were to approach it. And then manipulation. There are certain ways to manipulate these certain percentages so you can get 100% without having to stack as many things. And I'll be using the Affix simulator from the website, the browser, to demonstrate some of these points. Now, to briefly show you all of the things that were good in New Genesis and how Oracle kind of had all these things that you would most likely not want to deal with. And I still got a bunch of junk from these storages. Alright, so here's the big thing to note. When I say, let me swap the text again. Let me go back to New Genesis. And then let me also get rid of this damn thing down here. So, you see all these points for New Genesis, and I'll cover them again. It does not delete any existing abilities. So if I were to work with something, let's say this is going to be my main piece over here, this 6 slot with the Arcs Rappy so Shoot 3, Stamina 3, Spirit 3, React 1. If I choose this, and I select all these different pieces, note that the original piece, the one that I select with the Rappy so, let me make sure these pieces do not have Rappy so, it does not. It will not pop up in my list in terms of abilities I can carry over. You see, you do not see the Rappy. Actually, no, you see it because something has it. That's not what I want. Alright, let's skip this piece for now. You can see that there's no Rappy so. When I select those two pieces right there, there's no Rappy so whatsoever. You can see that there's an Arcs Fever, but Fevers tend to be at 100%. Don't need to worry about having dupes. Grade 1s are fine, but when you look at some of these grade 3s, some of them are higher than 60%, meaning that there's a dupe ability or something that's boosting it. But if I just stared at like a React 2, it's stuck at 60%. If I stare at the Wind Resist 3, it has a 60%. So once again, the original abilities on the piece that I have is Shoot 3, Spirit 3, Stamina 3, Rappy so, Arcs Fever. The reason why some of these abilities aren't stuck at 60% is because this kind of goes into that point that I talked about with manipulation. And let me pull that one up again. Manipulation. Some of these abilities are able to give a boost, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the rule and stuff as well. Some of these can give a boost depending on what the stat is. So I think Ragniso boosts up Shoot and Stamina 3 or Spirit 3. But because of that, you can see that the ability like this one, and also if I have other same abilities as well in the formula, it stacks it as well. But because of that, it's able to push some of these numbers that should have been at 60 to either 80 or 100%. But yeah, but if it's existing abilities that Rappy so, it's not on the list. If you were on New Genesis, it would keep that Rappy so. Now going back to this thing, it only uses capsules. Now, this is a good and a bad thing. There are capsules in Oracle that can give you guaranteed 100%, but when you try to upslot, that kind of kicks in and it's a negative thing. So let me show you what happens when you upslot over here in Oracle. It's not as simple like how it is in New Genesis. If I do this upslot method, you can see that to get from a 6 slot to a 7 slot, I need to put one more new ability in on here. but all the percentages you saw that were like at a natural 160 and all that, it decreased because I'm trying to upslot, and that's a penalty that will kick in. New Genesis does not have that. New Genesis will naturally unlock a bunch of slots as long as you enhance and limit break your gear. One simple approach. There's no fixed exchange. Well, there was an exchange shop of sorts, but it depends on what currency you're using. And because of how Oracle is now, especially since they killed off the Battle Pass mission pass over here on Oracle PSO2, you can't really get some of these things. So, natural cost. So, here's the thing. The cost to just use 2 stuff will vary. Depends on the rarity and all that. So if I were to demonstrate this, you can see that this costs 12,600. It's not as bad. It's in the 5 digits though, and it's a bit expensive compared to that of the natural cost over there in New Genesis. Now, if I decide to select this next piece, you can see that it shoots up drastically to 65. Now, if I use this piece over here, if I use 4 pieces, it's going to go even higher and go into the 6 digits now. It's 136,800 meseta. And if it goes to 5, most likely it'll push it even further to like 200,000, 300,000 meseta. Now, this is just with, what is this? 5-star rarity. Depending on what the rarity is, it could be dumbed down. But that's if you know said rules and approaches. This is why I didn't really reveal what I tend to use for, unless you're close to me and I decide to reveal the little snippet that I use. This is why I use these subcards. Subcards are nice because you can use them to manipulate these things and save a lot more of your meseta, even if you use all 5 slots. But it depends on certain factors like SAFs and all that as well. That's in Oracle only. They might add that in New Genesis. And I already mentioned the other bullet points. So let me go back to this. Alright, so I had to cut there because I realized that the rest of the recording, it was fine, but I didn't realize that the text in my face cam was covering the affix simulator. So this is pretty much what I got for the, what is it, the Oracle. Let me click on that one so I can move you. The Oracle Augment, pretty much many approaches to get the certain stats that you want, the end stats that you want. The rules and gimmicks is complicated manipulation. So let me move that out of the way, and let me go and bring up the affix simulator. And it is zoomed in, slightly zoomed in. Let me zoom it in even further. So yes, I already got this prepped and set up. Actually, let me not zoom in too close. Let me do 250. So, affix simulator. Now, for this example, let's say you will want to get a basic stat. Now, this is slightly somewhat equivalent to that of what New Genesis has in terms of its names and how to go about it. Obviously, there's certain other abilities you would want compared to something like this over there in New Genesis. But this is what I'm trying to demonstrate. Something that's kind of equivalent to what's going on right now. Now, this was back then in episode 2 and 3 era, back in maybe 2013, 14, 15, slightly getting into 16, in terms of what people were going for with the units and the abilities back in Oracle PSO2. Power 3, Stamina 3, Volt Soul. Now, there's a lot of things you can do. You can manipulate this thing, but to keep it simple... Actually, no, that's not the right one. To keep it simple, let's go with this one, where I wanted a certain soul ability and 2 stat abilities. Power 3, Stamina 3, Volt Soul. And as you can see, if I stack some of these, it'll be fine. It is manipulated to because of the Volt Soul, because it boosts 20% to a Stamina 3 and a Power 3, so it is at 100%. Volt Soul's not at 100%. If I stack with the most abilities, if I use 3 Volt Souls somewhere, it can get me to 80%. And if I use a 30%, 20%, it can get it to 100%. Or I could use a Soul Receptor in here and I can get the, the 100% as well. But let's stick with this for now. So this is just one of the fodder piece method to get the end result, which is Volt Soul, Power 3, Stamina 3. Now here's another way you can do it. Instead of going for grade 3s, you can go for grade 2s. So if I take these out, for example, you will see that I can do this method, but it's a bit riskier. Granted that if you know certain rules and functions and stacking, it's not going to be as bad. So if I decide to put these 3 abilities in my formula somewhere, you can see that I went from that 50 to a 70%. If I want to, I can put a mutation 1 over here, and guess what? That 70% is now 80%, and if I have a 30%, guess what? I can stack it and increase my chances. If I have a Volso somewhere, boom, it's all at 100%. Granted that I use a 30%. But this will take a bit of manipulation and work. This one, same thing, but it depends on your approach. You could technically farm for these, or you could try to manipulate it using the shop that is in the Oracle game. And I'll mention that in a bit. Granted that I don't remember where my recordings got stopped at, but I'll pull it up in a bit. And then to actually get some of these pieces that you need, let's say you want to try to get a power 2 with a Volso, what you could do is pretty much go and do this thing over here and just get a Volso that's at I fucked that up. What is this? This is at like 250. So I could do something like this, have junk abilities on it, and then gamble like this. Reason why you would want to gamble is because, well, you're trying to get this end result, which is a 3 slot, power 3, stamina 3 Volso. You can do something like this. So you have this sort of formula over here. Or, well, no, not that one. Like something like this over here, where it is needed to try to get the end result, which is power 3, stamina 3 Volso. Pretty much, there's a good chunk of manipulation, different paths that you can do, different approaches when it comes to you getting the power 3, stamina 3 Volso. So, I didn't mention this before I transferred to blocks, but I pointed out the NPCs and how the new Genesis one does not give you capsules naturally. Over here in Oracle, you can actually get abilities on weapons and units naturally. Granted that it's not at a high level. They'll most likely have like a grade 1 ability, but guess what? The formula that I showed you guys, this thing over here, and how like you can go from a grade 1 to a grade 2, this is how I was able to do stuff way back then in episode 1 all the way up to episode 4. This is how I made a lot of my power 3s, shoot 3, technique 3s, and this is how I supplied myself, the market, and then my allies and friends. I was able to manipulate all this stuff that I got from this guy without having to go to the field. I didn't need to spend hours farming, literally, because there's that guy right there. He gives me all of the grade 1s, and I just need to manipulate it, gamble, play around with it hours on end so I can get a bunch of pieces. And yes, this was a thing. This is how people made a good chunk of money, because they bought pieces from there, made their own piece, their fodder piece, and then sell it on the market. Repeat the process. It does take a bit to invest in it, but it's not that costly. The gains, the profit that you get from doing that method is a lot more. And I mentioned this in a separate video, upper right hand corner or in the description. So that pretty much kind of concludes my comparisons with the Oracle Augment system and then that of New Genesis. Now there's some other factors I'll point out to why I do not like the New Genesis one, but it kind of involves the fact that you gotta farm. And yes, you do the same thing over in Oracle, but there are some methods to kind of cheese it and get a bit of a luck rate. Or you can manipulate it to the point where you can get some abilities. Granted that you understand some of the gimmicks and some of the things that happen in the game. For example, if you understand Zig's charms, what is it called? Skill training and fortunate omen charms. These two things were great because they allowed you to get not 100% guaranteed, but it allowed you to get some stuff that was at a high rate that gave you a lot of money. And by high rate, I'm referring to high slots with certain abilities that you would like. And it will sell for a lot. But that's if you were lucky, because it's still RNG. But I was able to get so much out of that little benefit. But I didn't need to get like 100 pieces to do what I need to do. Granted that it depends on when you were playing the game and how you did set approaches and all that jazz. So the fact that I had to farm a crap ton of materials so I can get the certain abilities I want is not appealing to me, because it is quite dumb in terms of how much you need, especially if RNG is not on your side. Because if you don't get these natural grade 2s and grade 3 ability capsules, then you're stuck using the capsule 1 method, and the numbers are not that pleasant. Like it can stack to 100, it can stack to 1,000, it can stack to even more than that. And this is just getting just one of these abilities on one of your pieces. And then you gotta multiply that by how many pieces you got. No, I would rather just get some, especially with how New Genesis is right now. It's not at the stage where it's at the higher grades as well. Because if they are following what PSO2 did, this is gonna be grade 5s. I'm worried about the number of mats you need to get these grade 5s, but they might balance it out and make it easy or just like increase a bit of the percents when it comes to getting some of these capsules later down the line. But yeah, that's the thing. They get to most likely have higher grades and they get to demand a lot more. So it may not be ideal to spend as much capsules right now to get some of the best abilities that are just currently out right now. But that's just my opinion. So yeah, there's so many factors I can point out, but ultimately it's up to you to decide if you like it or if you don't. Just hearing this as well and looking at what you had to deal with, you might agree and or disagree. So that's my opinion. I already stated this once back then as well. I'm not a big fan of the new Genesis augment affix system because it just killed it for me. It killed the multiple ways to do it, and there's a lot of reasons to why I like the augment affix from Oracle. The big one that I haven't really stressed on and really hit a home run for is how I can manipulate the damn thing. I have control over what I can do. I have multiple ways to do it, but there's control. I'm choosing what I can do. I'm choosing the method. I'm choosing my poison in terms of getting these stats. A lot of games that I played, they don't really give you that option. They're kind of stuck with the RNG method. And yes, you still had to deal with RNG in terms of augmenting and fixing, even in Oracle. But it's my choice. I have multiple ways to do it to the point where I can lessen the damage. In New Genesis, you're stuck with those capsules. You lose those capsules, you're kind of fucked. And you got to repeat the process again, especially if you go for the higher grades. But for this, there's several things, several items, several functions, several approaches that you can do to lessen that pain so it's not as bad. Like, if I lose a power 3 back then, it wasn't bad. Because I did this method. It hurts a bit, but it's not that bad. Because if I produce so much, it doesn't hurt. If I get so much profit, it doesn't hurt. If I lose like, at least, like 100,000. Or at least like maybe an item that could have got me 200,000 but only cost me like 10,000, 20,000. It doesn't hurt. The big thing also to note when it comes to this is that farming just eats up a bunch of time as well. And the method to go about it all is just dumb. Because it takes a long time to farm for these basic things that you would need. Over here, literally, once again, I didn't spend ages just doing a lot of affixing on my own gear. It took maybe a couple days, yes, but most of the time when I'm doing augments and affixes back then, it was so I can make a profit, not because I was hurting and I need upgrades. No, it was because I already got that done and over with and I was just getting extra money. And I didn't need to go out on the field, spend hours on end trying to get a certain ability when I could have just gone over here, make it, buy low, sell high. But then again, that's just me knowing some stuff and exploiting it. Well, I guess exploiting, knowing it, just capitalizing on it. But that's it with my rant. I can go on, and obviously some people can say more if I don't like it because it's complicated. There's rules and gimmicks and shit. Guess what? Life is fucking complicated as well, and you gotta learn some shit that pops up every now and then. Maybe you don't know how to do taxes, guess what? First time doing taxes, you gotta fucking learn how to do it. You don't understand rules and concepts about the new workplace you're in, guess what? You gotta learn rules and shit. So I find it a stupid, lame excuse for people to say, oh, I don't know how to do augment fixing. You're playing a fucking video game. If you're playing a video game, you're learning regardless of how to play it. You're learning some of the snippets and bits, you're looking up stuff. You might as well look up some of the other functions and stuff, or ask someone how to go about it and literally have them tutor you for free on how to approach it. There's a lot of resources out there, and I hate it when people just say, oh, I don't know, or like, I just don't want to do it because it's hard. It's like everything is hard, especially if you're living right now in real life, because everything can be shit. It could be either jolly or not, but you know what? Fate's also a bitch, and it can shove a goddamn something into your arse. Now, that is it with this video. Any question, comment, concerns, put it down below. I'm done. I don't think I'll do an in-depth video ever again talking about this. I'll most likely talk about if you are playing on Oracle, and if you're wondering what abilities to go for, I'll mention that. But the problem is, especially as of right now, as of this recording, most of this stuff in Oracle, equipment-wise, ability-wise, will become obsolete due to the new stuff that is slowly popping in New Genesis, especially with the new rarities. And there are most likely better abilities that will most likely exceed that of what Oracle has to offer. But most likely it's also going to be a pain in the butt to farm for as well. And just to stress it all out, or just to stress it again, skills are a lot more important than fucking numbers. That's it. Peace. I'll see you guys around.